Every year, just as the world winds down for the holidays, The Economist drops a publication that does the opposite. It wakes up the people who pay attention. Not average readers, not casual news watchers, but the individuals who pull real levers of power. This year's World Ahead 2026 is unlike anything they've released in recent memory. The cover doesn't tease. It confronts you. Military standoffs, crashing markets, medical imagery, angry crowds. It feels less like forecasting and more like a briefing, a quiet alert passed from one circle of influence to another. And here's why that matters. The Economist has a strange track record. Its warnings tend to show up in the real world. A pandemic nobody expected, conflict in Europe, economic pressure that reshaped everyday life. Whether by insight or by access, their signals have aligned with reality again and again. So when The Economist chooses now to forecast chaos in America's 250th anniversary year, we have to ask a different question. What are the global elites preparing us for? Because messages like this aren't accidental, they're intentional. And if you felt like something big is coming, stay with me until the very end of this video. To understand why the World Ahead issue matters, you first have to understand what The Economist actually is and what it is not. It isn't a lifestyle magazine. It isn't a casual weekend read. The Economist is, in many ways, the quiet newsletter of the global ruling class. Its writers sit in offices positioned not where the readers are, but where power gathers. London, New York, Brussels, Singapore. Its audience isn't the average voter, it's the policymakers who never run for office, the central bankers who control money without ever touching a ballot, the CEOs who move capital across borders like pieces on a chessboard. When world leaders fly to Davos each winter, The Economist is waiting for them in their hotel rooms. It's read by G20 delegates, by technocrats, by think tank insiders whose names the public rarely hears, but whose decisions shape prices, interest rates, supply chains, even wars. And behind the magazine lies an ownership history intertwined with old European wealth families, like the Agnellis and the Rothschilds. Their influence isn't a conspiracy theory, it's fact, documented and openly acknowledged. Yet the exact structure of control today remains deliberately opaque, as if the magazine prefers to be understood for its ideas, not the hands guiding them. But the most important thing about The Economist is this. When it speaks, the world's most powerful people listen, and often, events follow. In 2019, its covers hinted at global disruption months before a pandemic halted the planet. In 2021, it spotlighted inflation and war weeks before markets cracked and Russia invaded Ukraine. In 2022, it placed Xi Jinping above the world like a puppeteer, foreshadowing China's rising assertiveness. Again and again, its forecasts don't just resemble the future, they precede it. Which raises a question we can't ignore. Are these predictions or preparations? Hit subscribe and stay with me. The deeper we go, the clearer the picture becomes. In 2026, the United States will reach a moment almost no modern nation has ever experienced, its 250th anniversary, a quarter of a millennium, a milestone that should inspire celebration, unity, and a renewed belief in what the country stands for. But The Economist offers a sobering reminder. Anniversaries don't guarantee harmony, and this one might reveal more cracks than confidence. Instead of picturing fireworks and national pride, the magazine describes a country increasingly unsure of its own story. The problem isn't just political disagreement, it's something deeper. Americans can no longer agree on what America is. Different groups now hold completely different visions of the nation's past, present, and future. What used to be shared values, freedom, opportunity, fairness, patriotism, are now interpreted through competing narratives that rarely overlap. The Economist points to several signs of this fracture. Political polarization has shifted from disagreement to hostility. Communities no longer share the same understanding of basic civic principles. Institutions once widely trusted, from elections to media to higher education, now face deep skepticism. Parallel realities have formed through fragmented information ecosystems. But beneath all this noise lies a bigger question. Is the American dream still a unifying idea, or has it become a dividing line? For many, the dream feels increasingly out of reach. Homeownership, stable jobs, upward mobility. For others, the dream never matched their lived experience to begin with. The Economist suggests that this identity crisis is not just cultural, it's geopolitical. A superpower divided internally becomes distracted, less predictable, and more vulnerable to global shifts. While the US debates itself, other nations quietly position for influence. So The Economist poses a question without answering it directly. If America turns inward in 2026, who fills the leadership vacuum on the world stage? China? A Russia-China partnership? A new multipolar order where no nation dominates? They never offer a conclusion because the point isn't the answer. The point is the uncertainty. Great nations rarely fall suddenly. They drift, slowly, quietly, until one day the change becomes impossible to ignore. And 2026, The Economist argues, may be the year America sees its drift in the mirror. As America questions itself at home, The Economist warns that the world beyond its borders is shifting in ways that feel both familiar and frighteningly new. They raise a question that hangs over the entire 2026 outlook. Are we entering a new Cold War, or something far more unpredictable? For most of the last century, global power followed a simple script: one dominant superpower, one clear adversary, and a world divided into two camps. Today, that script is gone. In its place, The Economist outlines a world splintering into three competing spheres of influence: the United States, China, and Russia, each moving in ways that quietly redraw the map. And the battlegrounds of this new era aren't defined by official declarations of war. They're happening in the shadows. Take a look at the flashpoints they highlight: Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, Gaza, the South China Sea, Venezuela, the Arctic regions where conflict isn't loud, but constant. Tensions rise, fall, and rise again like a tide that never fully retreats. But this isn't traditional warfare. It's something The Economist calls gray zone conflict actions, designed to destabilize without crossing the line into formal war. Cyber attacks that can shut down hospitals, airports, entire financial systems, underwater sabotage targeting energy pipelines and internet cables that connect continents, naval accidents in disputed waters, artificial islands transformed into military outposts, drones and proxy groups carrying out operations nobody claims but everyone understands. These moves are deliberate. They're tests, each one measuring how far a country can push without sparking a global firestorm. And while these tensions escalate, America's internal divisions weaken its position. A superpower distracted at home becomes a superpower forced into defense abroad. Meanwhile, China tightens economic alliances, expanding influence through trade, infrastructure, and currency agreements. Russia exploits global instability, leveraging energy, military partnerships, and disruption tactics. Regional powers hedge their bets, choosing relationships based on survival rather than ideology. The Economist doesn't describe a world on the brink of World War III. Instead, they describe a world already in a long, grinding struggle, one without clear rules, without clear victories, and without a clear end. This isn't Cold War II. It's something more fluid, more dangerous, and far harder to control. And according to The Economist, 2026 may be the year the world finally recognizes it. While the world focuses on political drama and global tensions, The Economist warns that the biggest threat of 2026 may be something quieter, something hidden in spreadsheets, bond auctions, and government budgets. A slow-moving financial crisis. Their message is straightforward. Wealthy countries, especially the United States, have been spending far more than they can sustain, and the cost of that overspending is catching up. For decades, the US could borrow almost endlessly because investors trusted its stability. The dollar was strong, treasuries were safe. The system worked because everyone believed it would always work. But according to The Economist, that belief is starting to weaken. Interest payments on US debt are now one of the largest expenses in the federal budget. Deficits are growing faster than the economy, and investors for the first time in many years are asking a dangerous question: what if US debt isn't as risk-free as we thought? This is why The Economist raises the possibility of a bond crisis, not a collapse overnight, but a steady erosion of confidence, the kind that forces interest rates higher, pressures the dollar, and shakes global markets. And that matters because the US bond market isn't just big, it is the backbone of global finance. If that backbone bends, everything connected to it feels the pressure: mortgages, business loans, credit cards, stock valuations, trade agreements, even the ability of governments to function. But The Economist doesn't stop at debt. They highlight three accelerating forces that could make economic instability even worse: biotech and health surveillance, giving institutions more tools to influence public behavior; cheap weight loss drugs reshaping industries, workforces, and long-term health costs; the AI boom, exciting on the surface but powered by massive investments that may be masking deeper weaknesses in productivity and economic output. Put together, these trends create a world where people feel the ground shifting beneath them. Jobs changing faster than skills, prices rising faster than wages, and institutions losing the trust they once relied on. The Economist isn't predicting the end of the system. They're warning that the system is entering a phase where small shocks can become big consequences. And in 2026, that's a risk no one can ignore. After laying out warnings about geopolitics, technology, and the economy, The Economist ends up pointing toward a conclusion that many people sense, but few want to say out loud. Crisis isn't always a failure of the system. Sometimes, it is part of the system. For everyday people, a crisis feels like chaos, job insecurity, rising prices, uncertainty about the future. But for the institutions and power structures that shape global policy, crisis can be something else entirely: an opportunity to reorganize power. And The Economist's 2026 outlook hints at three forces that consistently grow stronger during turmoil. 1. War creates obedience. In times of conflict, governments expand their authority. Surveillance increases. Freedoms shrink. People accept restrictions, travel limits, censorship, tighter security measures, not because they want to, but because fear makes them compliant. War doesn't just reshape borders. It reshapes behavior. 2. Economic panic centralizes control. When markets crash or currencies shake, people look to institutions for rescue. That's when new rules appear, rules that would be impossible to pass in stable times. Banking regulations tighten. Digital tracking increases. Governments move closer to controlling the flow of money itself. And the public, overwhelmed and confused, rarely pushes back. 3. Health crises shape behavior at scale. We've seen how fast life can change when a health emergency hits. People stay home. They follow new rules. They give up privacy for the promise of safety. Technologies born in crisis rarely disappear afterward, they evolve. The potential endgame: a programmable financial system. The Economist subtly points toward the rise of CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. On the surface, they sound modern and efficient, but programmable money also allows for limits, controls, and conditions. What you buy, where you spend, how much you're allowed to withdraw, all potentially governed by digital rules. In a world of instability, such a system becomes easier to introduce, not because people want it, but because they feel they have no choice. You can't control global systems, but you can control your positioning. Live below your means. Own real, tangible assets. Diversify your income. Strengthen local connections. Prepare before you're forced to adapt. Because if The Economist is right, 2026 isn't simply a year on the calendar. It's the beginning of a new chapter, and the people who see the shift coming are the ones who will endure it. Because 2026 isn't just a date, it's a warning and a choice. So when you put all these pieces together, the geopolitical tension, the financial stress, the technological shifts, and the quiet signals from institutions like The Economist, a picture begins to form. Not a prophecy, not a conspiracy, a trajectory, a world drifting toward greater instability, unless you prepare for it. Because the truth is, history never turns suddenly. It bends slowly, quietly, and then all at once. 2026 might not be the year everything breaks, but it may be the year we finally see the cracks for what they are. So now, I want to hear from you. Do you think these warnings from The Economist are predictions or preparations? Are they simply analyzing the world or signaling a future already set in motion? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if this video helped you see the bigger picture, if it made you think, question, or prepare, then make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with me. Because the more chaotic the world becomes, the more clarity you'll need. And that's what we uncover here, every single week. The information presented in this video is intended solely for educational purposes and should not be interpreted as financial advice. Your outcomes may differ depending on your own efforts and market conditions. Thanks for watching. And until next time, stay aware, stay prepared, and stay one step ahead.